prior to getting started on this, I haven't come before the Planning Commission in quite a while, and we do have some new members. And we will be doing introductions later here in a little bit, but I just want to say and express our thank you to you guys for doing what I think is the hardest job. Outside of being on the Board of Aldermen, the Planning Commission really makes some really tough decisions. You have a lot of material to go through, and we appreciate everyone being so thorough and asking the quality questions, and it's just not easy, and a lot of times it's thankless. So I just want to say thank you from the board for all of your efforts. We appreciate it. All right, we can get started.
All right, well, thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Chris Klein. I'm a landscape architect and planner with the firm Confluence. And welcome to what we're calling a kickoff meeting for the comprehensive plan update process for the City of Parkville. I have grown up here in Kansas City. I'm a Northlander through and through. Went to high school up here. Lived in Brookside for about 20 years after college, and then moved to Parkville about 6 years ago. And so we love it up here, and it's got everything that we were looking for: a great downtown, a great park right along the river, and wonderful neighborhoods and shopping. So we certainly want it to achieve its potential, and it's going to take the work of this group as well as all of the citizens of Parkville to help us achieve that through this planning process. We've got an agenda tonight. We'll do introductions here in a second, and we'll go around and make sure everybody knows each other. I don't know if everybody at the table knows each other. I know that our team doesn't know each other, and I'll introduce our team first. We're going to give you a little bit of a master planning 101. What elements go into a comprehensive plan? You've got a comprehensive plan today, the city does. We're going to be updating that. We're going to ask you things that have worked well with the master plan, and the Planning Commission uses it all the time, and the City Council. So there's probably aspects of that plan that you really like, and some aspects that maybe you want us to spend a little bit more time on and update. And so we want to pull some of that information from you, just your basis of using that document over the years and how you'd like to make it better. We'll talk a little bit about the project scope and the schedule. We're looking at finishing this process at the beginning of 2021, so almost a year's worth of efforts. We'll have 3 public meetings throughout that process. We want to get your input tonight on when's the best time to try to have those meetings so that we don't overlap with other events that happen here in the community. But we're looking at the first one happening sometime in April and spring, the second one probably sometime in the summer, and then the third one will be in the fall when we're drafting up some of the plan recommendations and kind of making sure that we got those things right. We'll go over some of the guiding principles in your plan today. There are some guiding principles in there. I'll walk through some of those, and we'll see if there's any changes needed from that standpoint. We'll talk about the name for this process and the logo. Right now it's the master plan update or the comprehensive plan update, but we'll be building a website for this process. Everything's going to be transparent. So all the meeting notes, all of the meeting information will all be up on a website that can be linked to the city's website, so that anyone that isn't able to participate in a meeting can go to that website. They'll look and see all the information that's there, and there will be opportunities for people to give input throughout this process if they can't make it to a meeting. So I want to make sure people know that. But we need a name for this plan, and so we'll do a little brainstorming with you tonight. Chris Shires will go over some of the demographic overview. We've done a little bit of analysis of what the demographics are here in Parkville, and how those might lend themselves to certain kinds of land uses long term. And then we'll do some visioning exercises with you, so you'll have a chance to give some thoughts and opinions. That'll help get us started, and we'll talk about next steps at the end. So I mentioned Confluence is the lead firm. We have a team of consultants. We have Leland, who does market analysis and economic development analysis across the country. They're based up in the Pacific Northwest, but we've worked with them on a number of plans just like this throughout the Midwest. They're very familiar with Kansas City. We're working with them on Merriam right now. So they've already done some analysis of the Kansas City and Northland area, and they'll be helping us with some of those recommendations throughout this process. Confluence, our firm, I'll be the principal in charge. With me tonight is Chris Shires. Chris was a planner for the city of West Des Moines, which is kind of the Olathe of Des Moines. If that helps you put it in perspective. High growth area, lots of additional growth there. He was a city planner there for 18 years. And we've had him here at our firm for a little over 6 now. And it's been a great partnership because he sat at the table and understood how these plans get interpreted and how to try to make those plans a little more user-friendly for the city as well as for the constituents that plan serves. Also with me tonight is Marshall Allen. Marshall's one of our planners. Marshall's from the New York area, and so he brings that East Coast kind of perspective.
We're working on it.
Good or bad?
Yeah, we're working on it. And then also with us tonight is from Collins Notice and Associates, Vicki Notice. Vicki's a planner extraordinaire. We have worked together on plans over the last probably 15 years. And before that, she was the planning director at the city of Kansas City, Missouri. If you've ever heard of the Focus Plan, Vicki was the author of the Focus Plan that took Kansas City through updating their entire comprehensive plan. So a lot of expertise on our team from that standpoint, and we're ready to serve. As well as we have Trans Systems on our team. They're not here this evening. The Trans Systems will be helping us with some transportation components related to the plan. They've been the city's on-call engineer. They're very familiar with the infrastructure that serves the community. I believe they're working on some trail projects now. There will be some trail components, as well as updating some of the infrastructure master plan for the community. And their expertise and background will be very valuable through this process. So that's our team. We would like to turn it over to you and ask each of you these questions. Who you are, where you're from, what brought you to Parkville, and then what's your favorite dessert? And I will start. So you know my name. Where am I from? I did grow up here in the Northland. What brought us to Parkville was my grandmother is now 93, but she was trying to maintain her house, and it had lots of stairs, and we decided we needed to become a multi-generational house and move her in with us. So we looked for a house that was big enough that she could have her own quarters downstairs. So she's 93 and still a Spitfire, and I've got an 8-month-old daughter at home as well. So we've got quite a range in our house, and we're loving it here in Parkville. And then my favorite dessert is what she typically makes for me. It's an apple double crisp with some homemade ice cream. And I put on some pounds because of it. So I think maybe we'll go around the room this way. So Dave, you want to start us?
Okay. First of all, thank you for coming. My name is Dave Rickman. I grew up on the East Coast, not too far away from you. On a tour in the military and got a whole bunch of stops in the corporate world. Finally ended up here after multiple moves throughout the corporation I was working for. So that's how I got here. And you look at the favorite dessert, I try to take some of this non-calorie because I'm always watching it. So I look at the little sorbets and all that kind of stuff. But I would love to be telling you your answer. I do little stuff.
Great, thank you.
So I'm Dean Cotterdahl. I grew up in Chicago area, but I lived for 25 years in Kansas City, Kansas, and worked. Once my son graduated high school, we were kind of empty nesters, and we always loved Parkville and the downtown area, and so we bought a house on Main Street about 15 years ago. And so that's how we got here. And my favorite dessert's banana cream pie.
It's a good one. Mike?
I'm Mike Wright. I'm an architect, recently retired from H&TV. I'm pleased to know that Chris and Vicki, who I've known for many years, are part of this, although I didn't know you were going to be here tonight. Becky didn't even recognize you. She came up and introduced herself to me first. So I guess it's been a long time. More gray hair and less of it, I suppose. I don't know, glad to be here. Look forward to this thing. It seems like it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
My favorite is, I don't know, I like them all. So ice cream, I suppose.
All right.
I'm Barbara Wassler, and I grew up as an Air Force child and mostly ended up in Omaha area and came down to Parkville in '93 during the flood and seeing it on the news in Omaha and not knowing where I was going to be. We're kind of looking Smithville, keep north, closer to Omaha. Got a house in Parkville, had no idea there was a downtown and all that it has, and it was like I just fell into a Norman Rockwell painting. So I was thrilled, and we lived up on Highway 9 and 45 for about 20 years, and then we just bought a house downtown about 5 years ago. My favorite dessert is pavlova.
I hadn't heard the Norman Rockwell painting, but that's very apt.
Yeah, I'm Bob Locke. I grew up in Jefferson City, moved to Kansas City in '82, so been here most of my life, I guess now. So I'm a CPA. I've got a CPA firm here in Kansas City, and lived in Parkville since 2003. And as a CPA, my favorite dessert is vanilla ice cream.
I'm Brian Whitley. I'm one of the aldermen here for the Board of Aldermen for Parkville. I grew up in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and went to school at University of Kansas. And then I had a love for water, so when I got my own home, I moved out to Raintree Lake in Lee Summit and was on city council there for a few years. And but then I needed to get closer to the airport, so Parkville, close to the airport, plus a good school district. Plus some other things that I did some research on, and moved to Wrist Lake where I could still see some water maybe in the wintertime because all the trees. But that's a good thing. So I'm out at Wrist Lake and I enjoy it with my wife and son. And my favorite desserts, kind of cobblers, anything with kind of a fruit, so I feel like I'm eating healthy. I try to kid myself in those.
I'm Nan Johnston. I grew up in many small towns in Kansas, but for the most part in Pittsburgh, Kansas, and that is where I also went to college. I moved to Overland Park and lasted about 5 months before it drove me crazy and discovered the Northland, and I've been there ever since. I moved to Parkville about 16 years ago and was recruited to be on the sewer committee, and that was my foray into government service. And my favorite dessert is cheesecake.
Hi, I'm Mark Sportsman. I'm an alderman, Ward 4. Like Barbara, I'm an Air Force brat as well, and we moved around every 2 or 3 years. We moved to Parkville in 1991, and this is by far the longest we've ever lived anywhere, and we've enjoyed every minute of it. My favorite dessert, probably cherry pie, maybe blueberry pie. So like Brian Whitley said, you fooling yourself. It's fruit. So.
Packed full of sugar.
My name is Tina Welch. I'm an alderman in Ward 1. I'm a Chicago native. I've been in Kansas City for 40 years, Plaza and Brookside, and then 27 years ago moved to Parkville. So the requirement was I needed to live in a place where there was a lot of trees and that the houses weren't too close together. And I found it here. And my favorite dessert is chocolate cake.
First chocolate.
I know, I was surprised. I kind of thought there would be more chocolate cake.
Greg Plum, the other Ward 4 alderman. Moved here to start 3rd grade at Graydon Elementary School. So lived in the area ever since, a few years. Finally moved into the city limits of Parkville, and I live in a place where I used to hunt squirrels and rabbits when I was a kid in Wrist Lake. I teach at Park University. My favorite dessert is angel food cake with a little chocolate syrup drizzled over it.
I'm Philip Losmer. I'm a Ward 1 alderman. have a manufacturing company that I've had for 33 years now, and lived in Parkville for the last 14 years. I'm gonna come clean, my favorite dessert is a glass of whiskey, so.
You just said what everybody else said.
I'm just honest, that's what I am.
Exactly.
Doug Wiley, Alderman for Ward 3, and I grew up in Des Moines, Iowa, so I'm familiar with Olathe, the Olathe North, and moved here right after college, so I've been here for over 40 years in Parkville. Matter of fact, I've been in the same ward ever since I've moved here. Worked for Hallmark Cards for the last 36 years, and favorite dessert is Boston cream pie.
I am Michael Lee. I grew up in Norman, Oklahoma, so Boomer Sooner. I'm on the planning commission here in Parkville. My wife's from the Northlands, so we moved up here in 2015, and have just really loved it. And my favorite dessert, the mayor's stolen, is cheesecake. Can't go wrong.
Hi, I'm Allison Berberick. My husband and I were met and married in Colorado, and we went to CU, go Buffs. We moved to Kansas City in 2001 and lived in Brookside, like many. And when our firstborn was 1 year old, we realized we needed a school district other than Casey Mo. So we've always loved Parkville for the first few years that we've lived in Brookside, and like Tina, wanted trees not too close together, and knew we didn't want to do Johnson County, so we ended up in Parkville 12 years ago and love it. My favorite dessert is anything chocolate, dark chocolate, lava cake, anything chocolate.
Hi, I'm John Dudlitch. I'm on the Planning Commission. Kansas boy that went to KU, graduated, and his partner's wife sold him a house north of the river with the intention of building on some property that we were developing. And the owner of the property died and left it to 5 different children who hated one another. And so the property never went ahead. And then I found that perfect lot at Wrist Lake, with one end of it looking over the lake and the other one looking over the top of Parkville at the Missouri River. The architect had found the perfect lot. Anyway, I was in private practice for 25 years, and corporate architect for Executive Hills for another 25. I've been retired now for 8. Lived up here for 31 years, and my favorite dessert is Legion. All of those names you've mentioned are all favorites of mine. Probably have the only fishing boat at Wrist Lake with a soft serve ice cream dispenser, and I don't know Mickey
Soft serve ice cream. All right.
My name is Walt Lane. I'm with Planning and Zoning. I was born in Fort Madison, Iowa. Moved around in a lot of small towns in Kansas. My dad worked for the Santa Fe Railway, so we moved a lot. I was attracted to move to Parkville because there's no Kansas City earnings tax, and it's a small town atmosphere that kind of represented it as getting away from the concrete jungle, as I think of Olathe, Leawood, that area. I'm an entrepreneur. I've built and flipped companies. I started the first ISP company in Kansas City, and own a company now, about 90 people, technology company, essentially. So I'm still actively employed and semi-retired, though. You'll find me going to Mexico quite a bit and vacation there. Favorite desserts, just like Mark, blueberry pie, maybe throw some homemade vanilla ice cream on that. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, I'm going to hand it over to Chris.
Oh, yeah.
Shires.
In fact, on this
and then
part.
You go ahead and tell your part.
Sure. Do you want to take this one, or do you want me to just jump right into it?
Oh.
Yeah.
Sean's distracted.
Yeah, that's right. The ice cream on your boat really got me. What? I'm excited.
Oh, I was going to say, I got electrical service on that thing.
Well, thanks you guys for taking time to be here. We wanted to talk a little bit about what your job will be during this process, and we'll help explain what our job is during that. But you guys are going to end up being the most informed people in Parkville about these issues. You already are, I think. And what's important about that is that we're looking for your leadership and your the people you know, so that when other people say, I couldn't get to that meeting and I didn't understand what was on the website, but you know, if Mike's okay with this, then I'm okay with this. So that you guys will be able to explain to neighbors and people at church and other places at work what this is about. Because sometimes it gets complicated and it gets down in the weeds, which we're going to do with you, but we won't be getting that far down when we're in with our public meetings and stuff. But it's real important to us to get public input from every source we can find. And part of your job with that is to attend as much as you're able and to listen to what people are saying, so that we can work that into the plan. Sometimes you get a lot of feedback and then the plan doesn't really reflect that you ever talk to anybody. And one of the things our team does, and we've all worked together for a long time, is make sure that the plan's actually built around the issues that are coming up through this process. It helps identify what the priorities are. It helps identify especially how they're linked together, because it's really easy to end up with a transportation section in your comp plan, and when you make a decision in there and it messes up something over in the environmental section, a lot of cities have trouble, almost every elected official has trouble trying to link those together themselves. So one good tool is if your comp plan reflects all those connections and linkages, then it helps you think how this thing works holistically. We think we're probably going to have 6 to 8 meetings that you guys will be involved in, and as I said, yours are going to be more detailed. We're going to rely on you for certain strategic directions. And that as we move forward, we're counting on you to use your experience and your contacts with other people that you know to help make sure that this is a process that's touched every issue that really needs to. Everything from flooding to your residential areas to downtown to all those kinds of things will be included. And we know the Planning Commission has to use this document all the time, so the more legible it is, more readable it is, the more workable it is, the better you guys will be able to implement it. And we're going to try and make an implementation section for you that will help with that.
Yeah. What was your favorite dessert though, Vicki?
It's trying to get out of that. Actually, probably what everybody else mentioned, but lately, I don't know why I got addicted to this one particular kind of Russell Stover candy that you can't find everywhere, and they only put it out at certain seasons. So I have been like sneaking into Walgreens and buying like 10 or 20 at a time and pretending with the cashier that I'm doing a kid's party. And that works well. I have one in my bag if anybody wants.
That seemed like too much of a confessional. Sorry, you went way too far with that one. I was just going to say pineapple upside down.
I should have just said ice cream.
But I think the right answer was chocolate, of course, all forms of chocolate. All right, well, thank you for that. And a little bit on that whole exercise where one is for us to get to know you, you to get to know each other. And we ask kind of an easy question like that. Funny enough, we've asked what's your favorite alcohol drink when it's a different organization. Just to kind of break down walls a little bit, get people to relate just a little bit more. You learn one little personal detail. So it is a little thing we like to do to really kind of build community and teams, because that's what this whole thing's about. All right, so we're talking about updating the 2009 master plan, and you'll hear us as the consultants, we're going to accidentally interchange master plan and comprehensive plan continuously. They're both the same thing, it's just a different word. And so a master plan or a comprehensive plan, it's this long range, big picture plan for the future of the community. It's what do you want to be as you continue to grow and evolve. It's a guiding document on where you should spend money and resources. It is a guide versus the law though. It helps inform maybe what a code or a policy would be. So it's to focus. Where do we want to see new development, and what's that development look like, and where do we want to put our valuable CIP dollars towards it. We want to make sure we have that strong economic base for the community, sized for your community, of course. This is a good information tool to help developers, the public, outsiders in the community, as well as inside the community, know what your value system is, what kind of growth and development you want to see, where your priorities are set. We're looking at your existing conditions, we're establishing goals, again, we're guiding and recommending. And this plan is going to evolve and change as your community evolves and changes. And we want to really push. We have a robust public engagement process that I'll outline in a bit, but that's important. And then finally, hopefully you can read that at the bottom there. We want to make sure we're identifying and building a community character. And that's why branding this process is kind of important. And so the final big thing we want to remember is that this master plan is also our justification for, say, zoning regulations and subdivision regulations, especially if there's something we uncover that might need to be updated, refined, improved as a future process. Even how you want to zone property. So looking at the Planning Commission directly, this will be your go-to guide to help you evaluate when you have a rezoning request in front of you or a new development request. Does it make sense? Is it consistent with the comprehensive plan? So we've outlined here the major plan components for the master plan. So there's that land use section. Again, this is tied back to developments to approve, zoning regulations, subdivision regulations, the natural environment, open space, the floodplain, parks and recreation, utilities and housing, economic development, and we're doing a full market analysis, economic analysis for the community. That'll be Leland's role in the team. And then of course, we're going to review some of these major components, chapters from your 2009 plan, your trails plan, again, that land use plan, transportation, annexation priorities, mapping, community for all ages. So we've broken this into kind of a 7-task process. And I'm going to run through these kind of quick here. By the way, I know we're doing a lot of talking up front, but we're gonna get a little more interactive here in a bit. So task 1 is what we're doing right now. It's this kickoff meeting where we're getting the plan started, and where we need some initial input from you on, who do we need to be contacting, stakeholders, reviewing the plan ideas. Task 2, we're gathering information and doing our analysis. In 3, this is where we're doing that big public outreach. And Chris talked a little bit about that before. We want to make sure we have a plan for how we're communicating to the public and a project brand. So we're going to have a survey, 3 public open houses / workshops, a whole series of stakeholder interviews. If memory serves right, 2 or 3 special event booths, a youth workshop or a Box City event, kind of depending on how much the school district wants to be involved with us. Box City events are just a heck of a lot of fun. That's literally where you're having school-age children, young children, help think what kind of community they want to live in. And they color up little boxes into houses and structures, and we lay them out on a big map. It's a heck of a lot of fun. And then other things we might need to do. In task 4, this is where we're doing a little bit of our scenario planning, scenario analysis. That's where we'll have our full market analysis, our land use analysis and scenarios, an analysis on transportation, and reviewing it back with the steering committee. And then in task 5, we're drafting, and then reviewing that with the committee and the public. Task 6, that's where we're going through that official public hearing process. And then 7, that's where we're finalizing all the final copies, all the data behind it, so that you have that good record keeping of the plan in a good online format. One thing I would note, we actually are doing web page content versus just a standalone website. We've kind of gone back and forth on the city's preference on that. So following this meeting, we'll actually be creating content for a page within the city's website. Either is just as fine as the other. It's kind of more of a preference issue. Our plan is after every one of these types of meetings is that our presentation is updated with some of the feedback we received, so it's kind of like a summary presentation and then posted so that members of the public who might not be at one of our meetings can see what went on, where we're at on the process. So timeline, Chris talked about a year-long process ending next January. I know it's a little hard for you to see, but we've kind of broken each phase into a couple of month-long process, each task. One question we do have for you is thinking forward on scheduling those 6 to 8 steering committee meetings. What generally works best? Are these typically, would your desire be an evening meeting, say like tonight started at 5:30, 6 o'clock? From your standpoint, what works best? Do we try to do an off P&Z meeting time? Anybody have a preference for as we're scheduling these? As your consultant, we could meet over the lunch hour, we could meet early in the morning, we could meet here in the evening.
How long are the meetings?
Oh, great question. So we'd like to have our meetings go no longer than an hour and a half, but we'd like to plan on 2 hours. Because sometimes you guys get excited and I hate to stop, because I will talk for 3 hours with you, but you may not like that. So hour and a half ideal, maybe 2.
Or for those of us who work, the early morning, the daytime meetings are tough.
Yeah, right, okay. Kind of consensus there, so scratch that one out.
If you were an hour and a half and lunch, you made it a lunch,
Mhm.
that might be okay for me.
No, couple heads are shaking no.
I think
We're trying to go.
okay time, 5:30-ish or whatever, that seems to work for most people.
It is 5:30 too early to get here. Does that work? Okay.
Depends on traffic from Overland Park.
Okay. Yeah, right?
How about the third Monday of every month? We don't have any holidays on the third Monday from now until
Oh, okay. Doing right.
January.
Okay, I
Which
like
is
that.
That's what, is this third or fourth?
This is fourth.
This is fourth. Fourth. Maybe fourth Monday, what, finance is usually fourth, right?
Do you have a-
5-week month or not.
Does that generally work? It's not like we're gonna do every single one of those,
Alderman meeting.
but does that generally work? Because what we do is we want to try to populate a calendar well out into advance
Fourth Monday of May.
and make sure that it generally works with everybody.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, so
So I
fourth
was thinking
Mondays,
third.
and we have to work with the staff, make sure we have 3 meeting space. Okay, so also following our meeting with you tonight, we will work up a full year-long schedule of what this looks like, so we can also get that pushed to the city website, so everybody can know generally when we are planning to meet, as well as those times for our public meetings. And in fact, we talked about doing these special event booths. So often we'll have a booth at the farmer's market, at some kind of special event. Are there any special events that come to mind where there's a good gathering of folks in and around the community that as a consultant team, we can set up a table and tent and just kind of grab them as they're walking by? We're ideally thinking that that would occur in the May-June time period, because that's kind of when the weather's the best. Maybe right before people are going on vacation.
And 4th of July.
Parkville Days.
Parkville Days in August.
Parkville Days in August.
Yeah, that. Yeah, and if something has to be a little outside the range, that's okay. So
Yeah,
Parkville
Brewfest
Days.
in April.
If
The
you-
quality of your response may not be great, but, yeah.
Yeah, wherever there's alcohol, that's always a fun event, but we start early and then leave early.
4th of July, if
Yep.
that would be, somebody could do work on the 4th of
Okay.
July, if that's a workable day.
Okay,
There's a big parade and all that.
After the parade,
sure.
or before.
Anything else like that as a special event?
Parkville Days.
Parkville
That's-
Days, 4th of July.
That's late summer, early fall.
Christmas
Late
on the river.
August.
But that's December.
That might be too late, darn it, we should have done that earlier.
Just
That
have to
doesn't.
bundle up.
Opening of
Yeah.
the dog park, or reopening of
Yes,
the dog park.
that will be.
Opening of the dog park.
Yeah.
Huh, okay.
You have to consult with Allison on that.
How about the
Okay.
Royals, whenever we
Yes,
Yeah.
have
that'd be
the
another
ribbon
one.
cutting?
Oh, the ribbon
Okay.
cutting.
I don't know that,
Yeah,
how many
no,
people
the
will show up for
masses.
that, but
Yeah.
I don't know. You never know. Gonna have a big.
Hey, if the Royals are winning, a lot of people will show up.
Okay, so we have to hopeful wishing on that one. All right, that helps us, because what we want to do is bake those into that schedule too, so you can kind of see that whole big process of what we're trying to do and when, so we maintain expectation and keep on schedule as well. All right. So I've ran through those 7 steps and what we're trying to do. Any questions before we go on to the next section?
I think we wanted to, someone was checking the schedule about the meeting, and the 4th Monday may interfere with Labor Day.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll make sure that, because it won't be every single one of those 4th Mondays, yeah. So we'll watch that.
I just see that, yeah.
I think the other thing we might want to clarify is just the planning commission versus city council, because tonight's a joint meeting of everyone as kind of a kickoff, but the planning commission is going to be the advisory committee or the steering committee for this group. So there will be a point where we'll bring the city council back in partway through this process and say, here's where things are heading, what issues do you have? So we don't have to have everybody at those meetings, but I just wanted to clarify that we're using tonight as a kickoff. So
yeah, all are welcome, but that
any
was
night
the intent.
Any night, okay.
Yeah.
They're here all the time.
From what you said already, obviously you're going to summarize the meeting, so while everyone intends to make it perfect attendance, if people are out of town or on vacation or something, we can still go to the website and get caught up on what's happening.
That's exactly true. So if you didn't hear that, yeah. So after every meeting, there's that summary document of this entire presentation, plus we actually add some more information to it based on the conversations, like tonight. That, yep, you can get caught up. There's a good record of it. Yeah, great comment.
So planning and zoning people come to every meeting.
Yes, that would be the ideal goal, is every of those 6 to 8 steering committee meetings, that you're at as many as you can, realizing that it's really hard to be at all of them. So we'll do our best. That's why we also want to try to get a schedule out early.
I don't know if this is appropriate this time, but one task I haven't heard that would be helpful is kind of evaluation of the current master plan and what has been accomplished out of it. I don't know if that's a Stephen task or...
So a little bit of what we're doing here in task 2 next, we'll include that. Plus, we're going to, as part of this meeting, even review some of the major considerations from the 2009 plan, and we kind of want a thumbs up, thumbs down, still needs more effort kind of ideas for you. So the short answer is yes, there will be. All right. Okay. Should we jump into the next thing here? What we want to do is just take a quick break. So we're not doing all the talking. You probably wondered if any of you were working ahead, what's all this stuff? So hopefully you got a pen, got one of these really cool postcards. Because what I want to do is just with this entire group, so this is for everybody again, I want you to flip that postcard over.
Do you have some more?
Oh yeah, sure do.
3 more sets down here.
Oh, we just didn't get enough down there.
Yeah.
Here. Just give you all those. Yeah, you want to just also one of each of these and pens. And if I were you, I wouldn't have wanted to sit in these closest 2 seats either, because I'd just be hovering over you the whole time. So, yeah, I would be stealing chips. So what I want you to do is take a moment and answer this question. So imagine this is a real postcard. Don't try to mail this. It won't work. But let's say it was. You're writing this to a friend or family member into the future. Hey, it's now the year 2040, and you need to come visit me here in Parkville because something great. This is one of those aspirational things we like to do with the public to get them excited about the future. We do it early on in our public meetings to get the brain really thinking creative. So it's the year 2040. You have to visit me here in Parkville because. So write legibly. You don't have to put your name on it. Don't worry about spelling, because if I made 100% of this presentation, you'd find spelling mistakes. So I don't worry about spelling. But I want you to answer this. And then here's the oral part. I'm going to ask just a couple of people to read theirs. And then we want to collect these at the end of the evening, because it's really telling to us. So if you do not want to share, don't look at me. Thanks, Marshall. This is one of our favorite exercises, and I think because Jane in our Des Moines office really likes making these. They're kind of fun. Oh man, you guys are really putting effort. These are gonna be good, I know it. 30 seconds. Pens down in 30 seconds. Okay, remember, don't look at me if you don't want me to call on you. Way in the back.
Call me.
Okay, since I picked on you, would you read yours?
Of course. Wow, you can't believe the riverfront. They have a beautiful park with water features and a Ferris wheel, as well as this incredible wetlands. I know how much you love nature. The downtown is historic and it's been updated with fantastic restaurants and shops. Wish you were here. I love you.
Nice. Okay, well done. Oh, so we set the bar way up here, so now don't look at me if you don't want me to.
You can always dream.
Yeah, that was good, and I love the Ferris wheel.
I'm gonna go because it follows along.
Yeah, please.
It's still one of the most beautiful places to spend time shopping, eating, and walking in the park. You'll love taking the Ferris wheel ride at sunset.
We have two votes for Bill.
We are kindred here.
We all need to wonder we like it.
Well, that's our dream.
I love it. Would you go since?
Okay, now it's 2040, you have to visit Parkville because this is the nicest little city you have ever seen. We have an adorable downtown, a redeveloped river with parks and activities, a lake, great schools, and quality of life other areas can only dream of. We have spirit, the roads are great, and the community is really cohesive and friendly.
Nice.
Dang, Dave.
Yeah.
I want to read mine. This is awesome.
Wait,
Good job.
I thought you didn't work at Hallmark. Somebody else worked at Hallmark. Clearly, that was
No pressure.
That was good. Please.
You have to visit me in Parkville because it's a crown jewel of the Kansas City Metro that balances economic growth with environmental preservation in a fiscally sound manner that promotes an exceptional quality of life.
Nice. Okay.
I'll read it.
Yeah, please.
You need to come to Parkville because you need to see the new River Park Museum, see the trails that connects us to Platte City on your bike or Zoomer, which is new technology. And check out the final portion of the sports complex and the Riverview Station, which could be a Ferris wheel.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Anybody else?
Oh, I just added
Okay.
an ending on mine. I don't even want to say the first part. Mine ends with, including a park near the river that has Wi-Fi available.
2040?
Exactly.
That may take a
Oh, my uppers.
20G.
Does anybody have one or a part of one that they want to read, just some element that hasn't been added yet? Please. The mayor was volunteering you.
Greg.
I'm not yet in my final resting place in Parkville, and we have live music and great art and shops and restaurants in our quaint setting.
Nice.
Final resting.
Okay.
Great
Well,
goal.
that's great. That is a solid vision for the future. It's really coherent and consistent, and I like a lot of the themes in that. So I'm excited to see all those. So don't take those with you. Don't throw them away. We'll collect those at the end of the evening. Okay. Well, we're going to jump ahead here, and Chris is going to run through the 2009 comprehensive plan components.
So these were some of the guiding principles in the existing document. We didn't have authorship in this. I don't know how many of you had authorship in them, but this is what's there. We thought we would just kind of read through them really quickly, and just based on what you see, just get a thumbs up, let's keep it unchanged, or a thumbs down, let's take it out altogether, or hey, maybe it needs a little bit of work. Why don't you look at revamping that a little bit? So the effort's not to wordsmith all of these tonight. Just let us know if it's good to go the way it is, take it out or work on it a little bit. So the first topic is community sustainability. And it's serve as a metropolitan leader in sustainable practices by conducting daily operations through balanced stewardship of human, financial, and environmental resources for present and future generations. The second one, incorporate sustainable practices into the built environment and our daily lives.
My comment on the first part is I don't understand what that means.
So, a little long.
Well, that's right. Does anybody here understand what that means?
Okay.
Well, sustainability is you can sort of self-sustain it. So balance our practices so we can continue to have the vision that we all spoke here going into the future. So it's a balancing act between finances and the kind of character of life we want and the kind of amenities we want. So that's what I took it to be.
Is there too much room for interpretation, or does it need to be a little bit more specific?
A little more specific.
We already have wordsmith.
Would you rather see these a little more condensed, and maybe a few more, instead of trying to put it all into one big sentence?
We already have
waxes
a
poetic.
city set of a corporate objective, so that starts first. We're talking about small town, quality of life, ambience, the community, and regardless, we know we're going to grow, but we still want to maintain that small town feel. So that document started.
Well, we can definitely refer to that and use that.
It's only a few sentences long.
Okay, all right. Well, and the small town feel comes through in most people's comments about it. So
we don't want to be an Overland Park or one of the major towns, and that's one of the risks that we have at this particular point of maintaining or improving our quality of life so that we don't become nameless in some major city like you see someplace.
Right, okay.
And we don't want to become 152 just west of Liberty.
Right. Yep. Good. Fair enough.
Yeah, I see the first bullet there's, you talk about daily operations, and you talk about human resources and financial resources. It almost sounds like the function of City Hall, and more than kind of the aspiration of its citizens and kind of at a higher 30,000 foot level. It seems more day to day.
Okay. Well, so we'll definitely wordsmith on this one a little bit more. Thank you for that. Second one is about community character. There's a few more bullets here. Preserve and enhance the small town ambiance. Establish quality public spaces to encourage social interaction, a sense of place, and reinforce the character of the community. Promote a built environment through building form, scale placement, and architectural design. Again, that word, provide a sense of place, reinforce the street as a civic space. And then integrate distinct features through the community to create value, identity, and pride. So there's a little bit of duplication in a couple of these I think we could wordsmith out, but I mean overall, still character.
Can I make a suggestion?
Absolutely.
I worry a little bit sometimes, I know we want to maintain a certain character, but I worry about words like small town because I wonder if that has a connotation that means that we're holding ourselves back. I'm wondering if something like progressive community would be a better choice of words or something like that. So I don't want to grow into the big nameless place that's been mentioned, but I also don't want to think of it as a small podunk little town.
Yeah.
I kind of like the word historic town, and we use that a lot, which says a lot right there.
You could say enhance Parkville's historic ambiance.
Yeah,
historic ambiance. Part of that small town that speaks to me is the friendliness, which I heard come through in several comments, and maybe there's a way to I don't know, somehow make
Right,
this
we
list
don't want
not
to
this
appear
impersonal.
unsophisticated, is the
Right.
point. You
Yeah,
know,
friendly
we-
sophistication. Friendly.
Yes,
We
you want
are
it to
very-
be.
We are the place where people want to live.
Right, and I think that's where progressive comes in a little bit in
Yeah.
my mind too. I think we want to be forward-thinking about how this is taking us through.
Okay. All right. Sound good? Yep.
An important key to all of this happening, I would think, is circulation. How do you get from place to place? Is that the automobile or some other form of transport?
Yep.
And how do you find pedestrian areas and integrate those within the community?
And we do have, there will be a transportation one coming up, so we can definitely touch on that one.
2 years ago, we were at it's not so much a strategic planning, but of a prioritization kind of meeting. And we were asked to think about how we wanted this exact question, but think about where you were when you were young. And the piece of information I throw out to you is most of the board is from smaller communities. You can pick the different words.
Sure.
But smaller communities. Not many of us are from downtown Manhattan.
Yeah.
And so we tend to, why people move here is because they're looking for a quality of life and ambience that isn't available in many other places. And that's
Yep.
what, frankly, I feel is threatened right now. And we need to try to do what we can do to maintain why we moved here originally a number of years ago.
Okay. No, fair enough. Okay. Next one's environmental stewardship. Preserve open space, clean air and water and natural features. Use a comprehensive strategy to manage stormwater generated by development. And plan and construct infrastructure projects to harmonize with natural systems. Here, some thumbs up, some, what's missing?
Boilerplate.
There's a lot of pressure on the open space.
Okay.
Well, and clean air and water, it sounds like we have an issue. Like, is there something wrong with our air and water here that we need to, I don't know, that just doesn't sound.
Okay.
Well, and
It says
preserve.
It says preserve.
But
Yeah, preserve open space, clean air, water.
From all the pressures that he just mentioned, that
Right,
we're going to be spending.
yeah.
Yeah, and I would suggest that use a comprehensive strategy to manage stormwater. It doesn't have to be generated by development, it's just managing stormwater. Managing our existing resources to make life more livable within the community and make the land more usable.
Okay.
On that first one, response, as I'm thinking about what Tina said, perhaps rearrange the words, preserve clean air and water, open space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just move that.
Yep.
Move it around.
Move it around a
Clean air and
little
water
bit.
Yeah.
first.
Okay.
Also, since we're talking about environmental, shouldn't we talk and talk about enhancing things like electric charging stations and trail systems and,
Yep.
and other than vehicular, standard in our mind, vehicular transportation type things?
Just for
too?
clarification, do those specifics come in later?
With transportation, yeah, they may.
I don't know if they do. I don't think they do. I don't think they got into that level of
Yeah, that-
detail or
they
that
weren't thinking.
technology. But we know technology is advancing all the time, and maybe we need to put something in here about
Right, and
emerging
certainly
technology.
the third statement, maybe the plan and construct infrastructure projects to not just harmonize with natural systems, but to preserve natural systems, which is kind of the environmental thing. We've got some good systems, we want to preserve them by using better technology, by planning infrastructure that promotes, whether it's smart cars or recycling or whatever it is that we're doing, in order to preserve what we've got, or enhance.
I take it to a further level to green spaces, preserving our nature, the physical landscape aspects of the city. I was not here when this got designed in 2009.
Okay.
But I was gone for a while. But it's just, you get the spirit of what we're trying.
Yeah.
We know we're gonna have to do things. What we do, we make the flowers still stay, the trees still stay, we make this place green, and when you come home, you come home.
Okay.
Because one of the things that I haven't seen yet, and maybe we'll get to this bullet point, is more on kind of redevelopment.
rip it.
So it's, keeping the open space. So you're going to have a life cycle for commercial development and residential. Things are going to age. And you see this in other parts of the country and other parts of the Kansas City metro where you're tearing down, the Kmart over there, that's kind of dead, and you're going to revitalize that. And so not taking away from any open space, you're just redeveloping the existing part. But part of that's also kind of a change in theory about zoning, right? Versus having your industrial center here, your commercial center here, your residential center here, but kind of more PMIX zoning where you kind of bring that all together. And so then you get some of the environmental stewardship thing where you're not having to drive 20 miles from work, but you can walk to work or to church and school and things like that, where it's more kind of, that's the kind of zoning. And so it solves a lot of things. Initially, 20 years ago, I was kind of against that because I was more in the stage of residential's here, commercial's here, and industrial's here.
Right.
But as I read more and kind of see how it's being successful in some other areas, it does seem that it has some promise and it might resolve some of the pressures that we're seeing here. Is like, how do you run stormwater systems through this? How do you run all this infrastructure? It's very, very expensive. But if you can kind of bring that together, then maybe there's some cost savings there.
Okay. So everybody agree, like whether it's in this section or another section, the idea about mixed use development and redevelopment and opportunities that come along with those kinds of things that still adhere to these kind of policies. Okay.
To a degree, and I realize we're only on overview at this point, but we don't have to have total scope of mixed use from here down to the bottom.
Right.
We are what we are in terms of our community, and we're not looking for the low income housing. We don't feel a need to do those kind of things. I don't need to have the ultra max density kind of place. That'll come later, I realize that. But we're looking for the quality of the community based on what our constituents currently are looking for upon the move here.
Yep. Okay. Next one is civic and open spaces. And again, you've seen some of these words, even civic and open space, peppered into some of those other ones, but this is kind of focused on those big public parks. Maintain and preserve existing open space and natural features to provide outdoor recreation and visual enjoyment and to enhance public health and welfare. Integrate conservation areas, floodplains, green spaces, woodlands, and parks as part of the built environment. Create unique, intimate spaces integrating purposefully into public civic spaces and private development, and embrace and connect with the riverfront. Anything missing here, or anything that anybody takes exception to?
Well, I mean, the first statement implies that if you have a large open space, you're never going to put anything there other than a park or something like that, and that's not the case, because there's a lot of open spaces that are more appropriate for other kinds of development. So just to generically say every open space we're going to preserve it, I don't know that that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you're right. I mean, it does say existing open space. I don't know that, I guess somebody could interpret that.
I don't know whether maintain and preserve appropriate open space and natural features.
Or open public space.
I like integrating it into future development plans.
Yeah.
Making sure that we encourage the type of development that makes these spaces available, rather than just say maintain existing open spaces. Right. We go up to 152 for our city limits, and that would just not be real likely to be on an interstate and not have it developed.
So somehow making it clear here that there are probably some places that it's maybe designated as future community space, and some that are probably need to be preserved as part of new development, and just somehow trying to respond to that and have that weave through here a little bit.
In some
more
cases, not every open space is sacrosanct.
Yeah.
Well, as a part of a master plan, do you come forward with a recommendation in terms of some sort of a percentage or a ratio of open space in relation to a city's mass?
We will look at what the market analysis says and what the anticipated growth would be. We'll also look at some land use recommendations, and some of that will also have some of these like riparian corridors and treat areas and areas that might be a little bit tougher to develop, but that could be part of a public open space system or network. So we'll have some of those things built into the land use plan recommendations as well.
Designated.
But yes, there are some standards out there for how many parks you need to have for
Well, you can tie the open
your
space into some
population.
sort of with planned recommendations or whatever. I think, just to say generically open space, that's too
Right.
broad. I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
Yeah, I think expanding on that third sentence about incorporating or integrating, maybe we put the word open spaces there, or some other instead of intimate spaces.
Okay.
Incorporating development with open space. Or
Maybe, yeah, and in the first statement, maintain and preserve designated open space and natural features.
Yep.
I mean, we're setting aside land in some cases to be developed for parks, to be developed for trails, to be developed for public use. And in other cases, there may be land that's set aside for commercial development.
Mm-hmm.
I also think, kind of going, I think Austin was on the third item with the open space and the development, I also want to see kind of a focus on redevelopment, because I do see some areas aging and need a redevelopment, and I don't want the attitude to be, well, we already have 4 units per acre, so we're going to have 4 units per acre here in development. It may not be that way. It might be less dense, and you have some open space or some green space around there, or you have a kind of a strip mall that needs to be redeveloped. And it doesn't have to be another strip mall necessarily. It could be a civic area plus a strip mall commercial. And I get that you still have to have revenue and you still have to make the dollars meet unless you're incenting it. But I think the idea is that it doesn't necessarily have to be the exact same thing that you're redeveloping.
Right.
You can also kind of focus some green aspects of that.
Okay.
So for example, the bus barn, if that moves like we anticipate, what's going to happen in that space? Do we include some open space in that?
And I don't know if this should be addressed in this section or somewhere else, but I think we need to do a better job of connecting our different areas of town. We have trails, we have a trail system, but it doesn't necessarily connect Wrist Lake with the Commons, with the National, with, it's hard to move around in our city if you're on foot, but we have a lot of people that like to run, and I think we need to do a better job of connecting.
Yeah. Okay. And Dean, I kind of talked over at one point where you were starting.
No, I was just saying, I think the intent of the first one was designated.
Yeah.
And that's what the rest of the plan sort of for,
Mhm.
so.
Yeah, okay. So we'll work on some wordsmithing on this one as well. Next one's integrated land use. A lot of words in the first one. Bear with me. Promote a whole building approach to sustainability by recognizing performance in 5 key areas of human and environmental health: sustainable site development, water savings, energy efficiency, material selection, and indoor environmental quality. So those are 4, material selection and indoor environmental quality. I think this one's supposed to be a next bullet down. So next one, integrate conservation areas, floodplains, green spaces, woodlands, and parks as part of the built environment. Provide a well-designed and interconnected mix of vibrant neighborhoods, parks and green space, schools and civic institutions, business and employment centers. It kind of gets to that connectivity thing. And then provide a range of quality housing choices and price levels that allow for a mix of residents with diverse ages, races, and incomes. Anything missing from this one, or
Does the first sentence belong under land use?
this whole building approach?
Performance with sustainable site development, water savings, energy efficiency, materials selection, does that really have a whole lot to do with the land use?
Could be more under sustainability.
Yeah.
Right. Some of them do, but some of them are more about, like, materials selection is not a land use issue, in my opinion. That's more of a character issue.
Indoor environmental quality.
Right.
That
That's not
doesn't
a land
belong
use
there,
issue.
yeah.
So there's some things in here, I think, I agree, that are weaved in that probably belong in a different section. But you can tell that sustainability, when you see that word show up here, it's trying to get that point across to somebody looking in this section that that's important. And maybe we just need to be purposeful about what those things are about sustainability from a land use standpoint. The mixed use, the redevelopment sites, and considering them to, address new needs in the community as opposed to maybe the need that was there 50 years ago that caused it to be vacant today. There's some things we could probably put in here about redevelopment.
And do we want to say anything? At some point in the next 20 years, we're probably going to be relying much more on solar, wind, maybe water for power. And we don't really know a lot of what's coming, but we know it's going to happen. So how do we better define sustainability to include sustainable power sources? I mean, do we get that far into it?
I think I didn't see a lot in here from a technology standpoint. And I think in some of those sustainable sections, as you're mentioning, we probably need to address that you want those things considered and incorporated where they make sense.
Well, I can't remember. Are below these things then sort of specific objectives or something to get a little more into the weeds? So that sort of help define what we meant by this guiding principle.
Yeah. These were kind of the high level things.
Like energy efficiency.
Yep. Yeah, we tried to stay up here at this.
Balancing things too, where you want sustainable, maybe renewable energy, but you want to do it within the character of the community.
Right.
So you want windmills in the middle of the old town. I don't know.
Correct. Yeah. If we were talking about a new plant of some kind, do you really want that adjacent to
But that's
a residential
another
neighborhood?
level or so down from these guiding principles.
Right. Yep. So I think if there's a way for us to weave some of that technology and try to have it address the topic up there, land use, but like this one, indoor environmental quality, I don't know that one belongs here.
That's the exact same wording that was in the previous section.
Right. I think there was a little bit of carryover, so we'll keep doing some editing on this one, Mike.
I've done unfinished reports, I can't help but wordsmith already.
Yeah.
I worry about things like when you say sustainable, recognizing performance. I wonder if you don't want to be again more forward thinking and in the new master plan talk about things like promoting
encouraging
versus just recognize. I think I'd like to think that Parkville is a cutting edge community with regard to integrating new technologies and environmental enhancements and those sorts of things. So I think rather than just recognizing what somebody else is doing, let's promote and perhaps be the first of in the state or something, or even in the metro area where we're doing those things.
Okay.
Maybe we're the pattern setter.
Yeah.
While using it to sustain the principles that we're promoting.
Well, this is exactly the kind of feedback we're looking for. I mean, obviously, none of us were involved with this, but just knowing where the community is now, where we feel like the direction is going to help to shape this. So that's good to know.
One of the functional words that's very important, last sentence, fourth in, is quality, because that is something we've been trying to do here in the community. So whatever you do in terms of rewriting this, emphasizing that's the scope that we're looking for. I realize quality means different things to different people, but you know it when you see it. And when you're talking about, sometimes you get proposals come in here that are bare bones, the skin, the less durability and so forth. We're looking to have it done in a first-class quality fashion that fits the ambience of the community.
Mm-hmm.
So helping it, maybe defining it a little better somewhere.
Yep. We can work on that.
I do see some conflict there, right? If we're going for first-class quality and having additional building codes, you're going to be restrictive to that income piece, right? And you're going to be, and maybe people are okay with that, but it's already pretty expensive to build in Parkville, not because of all the fees that are associated with it, but because of the terrain of the environment and the infrastructure cost and the grinding pumps you have to have in certain areas and the rock that you hit and everything. And we see that with our tax incentives and such, because you're in Johnson County, you're building on top of farmland. Here you're building on top of rock, and it's very different. It's a lot more expensive, and I'm totally cool with having more restricted building codes and you know, quality housing choices that'll last longer. But there is potential to conflict with the last three things.
Right. Absolutely, yeah. When you start talking about, you know, rising level of quality and costs, and the rate of development and the type of development that you could achieve, those two things, you know, there's a balancing act that we all have to be thinking about in all of these things. So you may want to leave things a little bit more general to allow those decisions to be made. But we just need to take that into account as we craft all of these throughout this process. So just be mindful of the impact of one type of decision and how it might impact one of the other types of things that we're trying to achieve as a community. Downtown, they call it Downtown Old Town District. Enhancing the character downtown through its built environment, pedestrian realm, streetscape, entrance gateway, and intimate civic spaces. Strengthen the connectivity and relationship between downtown and surrounding neighborhoods, educational institutions, and riverfront park spaces. Promote strategic residential development, creating a critical mass for downtown businesses, and promote strategic reinvestment. So to me, this one was very specific about residential development. It didn't say anything about office development, and yet you've got office development occurring down there now, which will really help to drive some of the daytime kind of lunch crowd. So are there things here that feel like we probably need to consider?
I think we need to consider, we've heard a lot of interest in actually living downtown, like in the business district, and incorporating, when we do redevelop, say, West Street, East Street, adding more perhaps mixed use and opportunities for living in the downtown core. We've seen a lot of interest in that, and I think it would help sustain the business environment in the downtown and help those businesses become more successful. And the more successful our businesses are, the more investment that's going to be put into maintaining the historic the structures down there. When we do not have successful businesses, there is no desire, you know, to maintain the buildings, and they decay. So, you know, by interjecting some more people that rely on downtown for their everyday needs is very important, I think, moving forward.
Right.
But part of the issue with downtown is, and we've talked about this, is that we've got to be careful with too much multifamily down there right now, because we don't have the infrastructure developed from a transportation standpoint to take care of it anymore. And until we get that, we can't do much more business development down there. I mean, it's a vicious circle. So I think you know, until we get to the transportation part of this, you know, a lot of these things are kind of contingent upon that, because I wouldn't recommend approving a 100-unit apartment complex that might support a tremendous amount of business down there, because we don't have the roads to take care of it. And until we get, you know, that's all got to roll together, and that's probably, you know, one of my thoughts on the next 10 years is I don't mind downtown developing more, but it's got to be developed in a plan that considers all those elements.
Okay.
And I think those two middle sentences kind of hit on all that we just talked about the last few minutes. Strengthen the connectivity and promote strategic residential development. I think those two things are still big goals of the Old Town District.
Is there something on the, this is about enhancing the character, but to your point about the infrastructure, do we need to have something that references the infrastructure in downtown that can support higher densities and new development? I mean, that wasn't listed here, but.
Well, I think what Bob said of the transportation issue.
Mm-hmm. And we'll have a transportation section. I just didn't know if that was.
Well, but I don't know if you need to say something here. You might, because the solution might be, well, put in a highway that connects you from the downtown right up Main Street. What's the problem? And then you don't have that little jog, and you just, but that's not what we want.
No.
Right. Okay.
So It's not just, I mean, there are transportation issues, but again, maintaining the character implies that there's going to be transportation issues because of the nature of what you're trying to do, unless we can route things around the downtown area through the transportation, some of those transportation issues.
Yeah, I'm sensitive, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add that it's not so much what we want, it's what our constituents want, and our people who live in our community that put us in these seats.
Right, absolutely. Yep, and like I said, we want to use tonight as a basis to begin to craft some changes.
Yeah, that doesn't mean you can't modernize, change, upgrade, all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, we keep going back to the core goals of our community, and that's not to be this very large, city somewhere that you can pick the one you want. We're looking to have that feel that everybody knows everybody to the extent possible these days, and we take care of each other, and we're here in a quality of life.
Well, I think the specialness of downtown needs to come through in the way that this is written. There really isn't the word historic in here anywhere other than Old Town. It is. But, so we may need to work that word in here a little bit more.
It's a designated historic.
Right. Yep. Good.
Well, I just want to say, I'm sensitive to the issue of infrastructure, but I think our little downtown is not going to be able to even sustain maybe and grow certainly without a better integration of residential and commercial and business that are happening in there. And I'm sort of thinking about the comments about infrastructure, and I'm also thinking that we've got Highway 9 and Highway FF, which are pretty good transportation arteries that cut through the town. And I think with some enhancements, those things could be enhanced perhaps to handle the extra traffic of the residential population, whatever it wants to be, if it happens at all, if it comes in. But I don't think I don't think we have maybe the very best infrastructure to handle more population, but I think we could have some enhancements that would take it on.
Right. Yeah, you got the highway right there, so I get what you're saying. Let's not make it a chicken or the egg kind of thing, but there's a way to make it work. Okay. Here's the transportation section. Provide a balanced, interconnected street network that provides connectivity between neighborhoods, provides multiple travel routes, reduces the number and length of automobile trips, and conserves energy through fewer and shorter automobile trips. Provide alternative context-sensitive street design standards that respect local topography, minimize the amount of impervious surfaces, conserve open space, and protect natural features, and water quality. Provide convenient access to a framework of transportation alternatives, including pedestrian and bicycle systems, public transit, and multimodal transportation options that reduce dependence upon the automobile. So, a lot of times when we look back at older things, they don't necessarily have multimodal in there, so this was pretty progressive from back then. I don't know that it keeps the Zoomer from happening. Nothing in here about a Ferris wheel, but you're just going around. Anything, does this feel like it captures things so far out of all the sections, or is there something you feel like we're missing here? There wasn't anything about the charging stations or the use of that kind of technology as a part of the city's transportation strategy. Is that something we need to weave into this somehow?
Yeah, because that technology didn't exist then, but it does talk about the trails and alternative transportation networks.
Yeah.
Don't we need to work technology through all this?
Yes.
Yeah, the first sentence, correction, the first sentence, the second line really needs to be reworked.
This, and then it kind of,
that's
the way it's written, condense it.
Yeah. It doesn't strike what was mentioned, I think the mayor mentioned earlier about connecting key activity centers, like downtown and West Lake and Commons and that, with not just with cars, but with trails and that. That doesn't pop out at me.
Yep.
And I think that could be a key.
Okay.
Well, what we may want to do is consider rearranging to provide alternative context-sensitive street design or provide convenient access to a framework of transportation alternatives. Maybe that's the first one. That the first, I mean, something that we really need to consider is how people in the future and today want to get around. And it's just not by car, there's alternatives. And then, but we need to also take into consideration the automobile that's going to be around for a while and how it goes. But by putting the third one first, you kind of put it front and center of here we have trails, we have walkways, we have other bike trails, we have more connectivity that is non-traditional or is not automobile.
I
Like
think
golf carts.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, the public transit and multimodal transportation, it's aspirational. I realized this was 10 years ago. It just, I don't know how well that's going to work in Parkville. It's
Yeah.
just, the density's not there, and people don't want the density to be there to support public transit, I think. At least from what I hear from constituents and multimodal transportation. They like kind of, having 100-foot lots or 200-foot lots, and they don't want to have the huge, which you kind of need to have public transit or multimodal to make it a go. I like that alternative transportation options because there's things that you can't anticipate. I do see the automobile lasting at least for another 10 years, and at least for our community in terms of the incomes that live in Parkville that can continue to afford those types of things. Unless you go to you have the change in housing stock where you public transit is more of an appeal for people that can't afford cars, and you get Amtrak to have a stop at downtown or something like that for multimodal transportation. I just don't see some of this happening. There's none of this happening at least in the foreseeable future. I could be wrong, but just kind of where I hear people, they don't want the density. There's certain things that they want that are pretty much incompatible with public transit and multimodal
Well,
transportation.
and I've had conversations with the KCATA, and our public transit would not consist of the traditional buses. It would be more like vans. If we were to adopt something like that, it wouldn't be,
Right.
Well, but it's certainly, by saying alternative, that might be able to include some kind of public transportation that links you from the downtown area to Parkville Commons or out to 435 and 45.
but it will be based on our community size and density,
Right.
as Brian mentioned.
I could see a need for vans, for wheelchair access vans, and when we're communities of all ages and kind of going to that.
Oats
And as
buses.
we have
Oats buses.
oats buses, as we
Yeah,
have
I'm gonna
aging
buy
community,
that.
aging in place, I can see a need for that type of transit.
And I don't know if anything needs to be put in here. Greg had mentioned golf carts. Golf carts are allowed on streets of up to, I think it's 25 miles per hour. So they're legal within our residential districts, but getting to the commercial districts is a little bit of a challenge. And I think we should make it a policy that anytime we redo a major artery such as Highway 9, that we put in a pathway that is wide enough to allow for the golf carts to be used on those pathways, so that they're not just pedestrian and bicycle, but to safely move golf carts. Have just been seeing more and more of them, and not just in golf communities. I mean, I'm seeing them in a lot of the neighborhoods, and people are using them more, and it's probably wise to at least plan on it. Some of the older neighborhoods, and I say older like Brisk Lake, of course they're allowed on the streets, but if we only built your standard sidewalk, that would not allow for golf carts.
Have you ever been to the villages in Florida?
Yes. I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're golf cart crazy down there. And
But,
they
see,
go
but
everywhere.
we need the infrastructure to allow them to move
Yep.
safely, especially like when we've got 45 Highway and Highway 9, yeah.
I swear there are more golf carts down there than cars.
The other thing is not built in 2009, which is becoming more of an issue now because of our population growth. I mean, we're going from 5,000 to 10,000. I mean, we've now begun to experience congestion, and I don't know how that's considered in the transportation, but it's not been a problem in our city, but it's becoming a problem in our city, and it's not going to get any better unless we kind of, maybe it's built into some of those, I don't know, but it needs to be specifically considered.
Part of the scope for the transportation side is to look at your major arterials and your collectors, and just to see if there are improvements that are needed that need to be factored into the CIP, to kind of have a laundry list or a roadmap of what those investments might be over time. And some of that could be based on congestion, some of it could be based on just the condition. One of the other aspects of this part of the scope is to look at this, the potential for an east-west connector that could happen north of downtown that would connect 9 Highway over towards the west. I think there was some work done on that years ago. We weren't involved with it. That's what I understand. Trans Systems is going to be helping with that component as well, just to look at what the options are for maybe relieving some of that congestion, where folks from all the businesses along 9 Highway right now use 9 Highway to get up and down and maybe go over to the west, and it might alleviate some things or some ability for the growing parts of the western side to make their way towards downtown and not have to use 45 or some of the other east-west corridors. So that will be a component of their work, and they'll be able to talk about that throughout this process as well.
I'm not catching totally, I mean, I heard what you said.
Sure.
But the one thing that has been an issue is for people on 45 trying to save a few minutes and cut through the side streets at usually higher than speed limit rates. And that is a problem right now. So that's the offset that has to be taken into your consideration.
Right. Yeah, and I think you want to design those streets so that they're not encouraging people.
Designed as residential streets and not as
we're in the weeds.
Sub-highways.
Yep, okay. We'll definitely take that into account. I think this was it. So thank you for that. I just wanted to cover those at a really high level, let you know that we're obviously open to changing those things, and I appreciate your input tonight on that. I'm going to hand it over to Vicki to talk about the name of this study effort.
Okay, we want to be conscious of your time, get you out of here on time, but we've got a couple more things we want to do that go back to some of the practical issues, and then we want to spend just a little bit of time on some initial issues that come up from the data, because it's really important on these things that we're looking at not just what's happened, but what's projected to happen in the future, and what trends are we on, and what demographics are going to affect you, so that all these things start wrapping back into the discussion you've just had as we get into more detail. But in order to do that, and partly for the public input that we want to encourage, is that this thing needs a name. And sometimes these things are more fun to do at a bar, but we can do it here tonight because we have our whiskey dessert guy here.
Still here. Boy, a little comment.
Still here. So we threw up a couple of ideas up here, and we're looking for others as well. If you have any other ideas, but if any of these strike your fancy, we always think this has to pass like the straight face test. I mean, you want it to explain what the heck it is, but also have a little bit of pizzazz about getting people to think it's going to be interesting. So we have Parkville Plan 2040, Planning Parkville for 2040, just Plan Parkville, Perfectly Parkville, the Parkville Master Plan 2040, Parkville Progress, which kind of goes back to what you were talking about, Mike, and Progress Parkville.
Is there a reason it's 2040? Are we making this for 20 years?
Most comp plans are sort of aimed at a 20-year horizon, but things change faster than that sometimes.
So I guess, I mean, it was essentially 10 years since the last study, so I didn't know we should plan on more of a 10-year horizon?
Well, the discussion usually ends up being more about 10 years, but I think, what do you want to decide that now, or you want to decide it later?
We sure could leave it more open. And like with this planning effort, I would agree that the plan probably has a 10-year shelf life, but we like to plan out at least 20 years. And in some aspects, we're even planning out farther than that. But that was our initial thought, is we're planning out for 20 years, 2040. we're just lucky that it's even. So that's also kind of catchy. You know, it'd be less cool to say the 2039 plan, but it sure doesn't have to say that at all.
Yeah, you can leave the date off if you
Yeah.
think that's confusing, but I think in
Right.
reality, you're gonna be looking at issues for
I
20
think
years.
you need a date, because that tells people you're looking ahead.
What is the current master plan referred to as? What's it called?
Parkville Master Plan.
Parkville.
How about a date?
So it's pretty bureaucratic, right?
Yeah. How about Vision Parkville?
That's good.
I like that.
I would be open to anything, but I think we want to stay away from progress, the word progress, because the economic development plan is called Parkville's Plan for Progress.
Oh, okay.
So we want to not get those two studies, those
Okay.
two things confused.
That's a
Plus,
good point.
it's political
This is a legal
charge, too.
document.
Yeah.
And therefore, I really would think of putting a more
Parkville.
precise definition.
Parkville.
So it's the Parkville Master Plan. That's what it is. The document ends up in every court in the county at one point or another.
Right. Or we can do a subtitle that goes with that kind of helps, yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, for the initiative, what we're gonna be doing for the next year, I kinda like the planning Parkville for 2040 or whatever,
Me too.
because that's saying, get engaged.
doing
We
it,
want
yeah.
you, we're doing this.
Yeah, it's a verb.
What that planning Parkville for 2040 will produce will be the Parkville master plan.
That's a good point. And that'll be easy to transition into as we work through the process this year. Are people pretty okay with that, Mike?
Good idea.
I think that's the only way that I like using 2040, really, because it explains why 2040 is there. The rest of them just don't really say, it just throws a number out.
I think it's more engaging when we go out to talk to
Right.
someone.
We want people to know
them
that
be involved.
we're not done. You're not showing them something you've already decided that they're part of the plan.
Close enough for me.
Okay.
Can you repeat it back, Ken, what we are kind of coming to?
I think where we're headed is to use the term planning Parkville for 2040 through this process and for the website and how to identify it. And then as we get done, it will probably take on the name of the more legal document, which is Parkville Master Plan or Comprehensive Plan
Or the 2020-21 Parkville Master Plan?
Yeah, we can, actually, it's good to look at that based on how these issues turn out, because we don't know yet exactly how these are all going to get dealt with. So that's a pretty good idea. Mike, you have?
I've got two I want to throw out. One of them I don't like is one's the other one. Parkville Forward may be an option, again, forward thinking about how to move. But another one that I kind of like tying into here is Parkville 2020 Vision. Kind of tying in, 2020 vision is a good thing, but like, and we're doing this in 2020. But I don't know, that might be a little too cute for people, but.
Do people want to think about those three then, the two Mike just raised, and then the planning Parkville?
Did he write those down?
But I would do 25, I would do 2020 like a year.
This one, the planning Parkville that we were talking about, and 2040, planning Parkville for 2040. And then these two that Mike just raised, Parkville Forward and
Sorry,
Parkville
the
2020.
plan's going to be out in January 2021 though, so then does it look dated already?
And my concern is using 2020 makes it
Again.
sound like we're planning for
now.
this year,
Yeah.
not
Right.
for a big vision for
Okay.
down the.
I still like, I
2020.
still like Dean's idea of process, calling it planning Parkville
Then you have Vision, Parkville,
2040.
Parkville Vision, so it's really the same thing as what was.
Are most people okay with planning Parkville 2040? And then we'll look at the official name when we get there. Okay, good.
Yeah, we've got a year to figure that one out.
Yeah, so what we'll do is we're going to work up just some layout logo look based on your current logo. And what I was thinking, just to add on that, it'd be almost like, it could be Parkville Master Plan, and then the tagline is Planning Parkville for 2040.
That works.
Yeah,
Might do
that works.
Let's just think of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
This next exercise, which we probably don't need to spend a lot of time on right now, because we want to go through some of the data, and then we have one last exercise for you to do. But we want to identify, we're going to start talking to key stakeholders in the community that we need to hear from, hear what their concerns are, and a lot of these same kinds of questions. Some of those can be identified by groups like the Chamber of Commerce or the university or downtown merchants, etc. Oh, yeah, okay. There we go. So we wanted to ask if there's anybody we've left off or for some reason shouldn't approach. And then also,
University up there.
There you go.
We have higher education.
Higher
Sorry,
education.
this wasn't my mistake.
Okay.
Yep.
The Parkville Economic Development Council.
Parkville EDC.
Parkville Economic Development Council,
Public safety people.
public safety, that's good.
Slow down just a little bit. I like challenging Marshall or Wright, but I didn't have this any.
Public safety.
Okay. Also, if there are very specific people that you can give us their names on your way out tonight or put them up here on the thing, that would also help us. Yeah.
I think we probably should include things like Platte County Regional Sewer District,
Okay. Infrastructure.
Missouri American Water,
Okay.
utility folks.
School board or-
Does Platte County oversee the trail system as well? Or is there an
Platte
organization?
County does, yeah.
Not ours, though.
Not ours, but we're
connect
tied
with
in
them.
with them,
Okay.
different places.
And we try to follow some of their master plan. on
So
how
what are we
we-
saying, Platte County, what? Platte County Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Anything else that comes to mind?
You have neighborhood leaders, and we have a lot of large neighborhoods, so, and it's not just maybe the leadership, you might have like 2 or 3 people, but I would think maybe like the HOA meetings, the annual meetings, and having a presence at Wrist Lake and National, 1,000 Oaks and the like, and having a presence there. So you're getting not just kind of, I mean, the boards are I'm sure are reflective of their constituents, but you can get some more opinions perhaps there with the annual meetings.
Okay.
Yeah, especially if you had the HOA presidents involved.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and in some cases, like probably as, I know Thousand Oaks, but other neighborhoods that are not fully developed, the developers really are the HOA. So it's not really residents. So, I mean, developers, I guess, are kind of their own section here. But, I mean, they are the HOA in certain neighborhoods.
That's a good point. And then I think trying to make sure that residents have as many opportunities as possible, whether they don't have real good access to their leadership or they aren't on any of the websites or that kind of thing. Try and get the word out as much as possible through the process. And then we take, we want as many viewpoints from here. Is it easy to do business? Is it hard to do business here?
You have
those
schools,
kinds of issues.
does that include PTAs as well? Or are you just talking like the principals of the schools?
It could. I mean, whatever you guys think is the most productive.
PTAs would be good.
Yeah, or we can put them together. I mean, that's okay too.
National Golf Course.
So, yeah, okay, National Golf Course.
5-star, is that kind of what you mean?
Separate. 5-star lifestyles and the National Golf Course separate.
Are you saying separate for 5 stars?
National Golf Course and
5-star.
Well, one of
5-star.
them's an HOA and the other one's a developer, so I think we're going to get over both.
Yeah.
Anything else come to mind now, or any perspective you think we might have left off, and then you can give us specifics?
Dog park participants.
Dog
Dog park issue, but you have people that are kind of out there recreating their destinations downtown, and then with the reopening in May-ish, I think that would be you can combine your booth with people that are active and out there using the system. And so maybe people that are using the park and the trails and that sort of thing. So your stakeholders could be people actually using the park system.
There's a lot of runs scheduled, in the spring and in the summer. That might be a good time to come when we have a big run downtown in the park.
You get mostly residents at that, or do you get
No.
people from other?
It definitely more the regional.
You would get regional.
If it comes from the regional people, they're not always as helpful about Parkville itself. So anything that's going to get Parkville people there would be helpful.
Isn't there like a Main Street Parkville district?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Main
they
Street,
own
Parkville
Main Street
Association.
Main Street Association. That's good.
Yeah, they would be.
Okay, and if those are a couple of separate different groups, that's fine.
If you put
It
that
is.
one down, then we have to put the CID to sit down there.
Okay, yeah.
We have CIDs all over though. I don't know if we want to get, if we do the downtown CID, we've got 3 others, so we need to, you know, either include all or exclude.
Or you
Okay,
get them
well-
in business owners for the
Yeah.
most part.
Yeah, I think business owners covers that.
Okay, you can do it that way.
I'll throw it out to the group, and I don't even want to go there or not, but do we want to throw out, like, talking to MoDOT or even the railroads?
We probably will be talking to MoDOT anyway, or, yeah, MoDOT anyway. Railroads are infamously difficult to talk to.
Oh, we know it.
But if we have an issue, then
Yeah.
yes, we'll be meeting with anybody that's got it.
We hire them to
Didn't know if
solve
we
our
wanted to do
railroad
that.
problems.
I'm not sure whose track record is the best.
So I have a question just about Parkville city limits.
Okay.
Because we've got, again, back to the neighborhood that I live in, is part city limits, part not.
Okay.
So.
And the other parts in the county?
Unincorporated Black
Unincorporated Black
County.
County.
So, for instance, the school that my children go to is half Parkville residents, half not.
Okay. Well.
So the PTA would be some Parkville residents, some not. So I'm just curious how far we get out beyond the city of Parkville.
I think we've talked about this a little bit with the mayor in an initial conversation, but I think it depends, like if you took the school issue as an example, I think anybody there is going to have a good sense of Parkville itself, or maybe why they particularly live outside the limit as opposed to inside.
Well, they don't normally know that they're living outside
Right.
until they buy the house.
Right,
And then
and
they
that's,
find out.
that's pretty common in a
Yeah.
lot of places. So we'll take that into consideration, and if that becomes a bigger issue for some reason, then we'll probably rely on you guys to help us.
And we do have the Parkville License Bureau in Kansas City.
Yes.
That's
Right.
right.
The Parkville dentist.
Oh, it's in Kansas City, Missouri.
Burlington
City
City,
limits.
Kansas City, yeah.
Okay,
So we have those issues
so
where people think they're in Parkville, but they're not.
Well, we
everybody in the,
discussed this in our
everybody in the
interview.
metro area has a problem with that. I think we have 110 cities, 164 or 64
We
school
look at it
districts.
as a favorable comment because many people want to say that they live in Parkville.
That's a good
So
point.
something's been going right.
That's
Not
a-
everything, but
that's a
something's
good
been
point.
going right.
Yeah, okay.
And so you start with that premise. But,
Okay.
you know, the people that are outside those areas, your input's important too.
Right.
Uh,
Well, and if they're, especially if
They
they're
certainly
very
weren't
close.
identified because, you know, they're using our facilities, they're using our stores, they're coming through our community.
Well,
It's
some of
important
what-
we know
yeah.
what they're thinking.
And so, yeah, especially in terms of, it helps with our demographic projections on income levels and who buys what kind of services and how many restaurants can you support and all that kind of thing. So if you have specific names, catch one of us on your way out and we will try and make sure that we've got a comprehensive list of people to give us some perspective. And then I'm going to turn this over to Chris to go back to a little bit of the data, not all the data, but some of the data.
Okay, so thank you for that. Again, what we'll do is we'll be compiling this big, humongous master contact list to try to set up these stakeholder interviews, over a couple of day period. Not everyone will want to participate, so the bigger the list, sometimes the better. And then there'll be probably some other people will more targetedly reach out to. So thank you for that. And again, that's a part of this larger public input measure. We're doing the survey, the 3 public input meetings, the stakeholder one-on-one interviews with the consultant team, and so forth. And so with that, in this presentation, and you'll be able to get a copy of this later, there's a lot of initial demographic information. I think I'm going to just kind of roll through this super quick. In sum, what it says is Parkville's a rather affluent community with really good home values and really good incomes. There are some, folks that fall out of that upper end threshold, of course. And it's a growing community. Kind of has some strange things going on in the demographics. There's this kind of missing middle. We don't normally see this in the 35 to 45 kind of age cohort. For some reason, that's also been in decline. We're not sure why that is. And it's a small enough sample size that sometimes that census data gets a little wonky, but kind of a strange thing going
What's
on
the
here.
sample size?
It's your community. I mean, and this is, it's just that it's 2017 ACS data, which is a survey rather than an actual census. So it's a statistically valid survey versus a full-on census. But anyway, I'm going to skip through all of this and just hit some key things because we're just about out of time and we want to hit some other things.
But we'll also go over this in detail when we share the market analysis
Yeah.
and this together, so.
Yeah, and some of the interesting highlights, you know, your household size is a little larger than we normally see. You know, almost, you can see the, you know, this 3 and 4 household person. It's a little bit on the upper end. Incomes, household incomes, then this high end, you have a very high percentage. Still have folks with lower incomes, but you're really bucking the trend compared to anyone else we want to compare you to. One thing I did want to point out, because this was brought up a little bit on just you communicating where you live versus where you work. So what this is showing is in Parkville, where you work versus, you know, do you live here? So if you work in Parkville and live somewhere else, we have about 3,400 people coming into Parkville to work. We have about 2,800 people leaving Parkville to work. And we only have about 135, and again, this is 2017 ACS survey data, 135.
Well, I know more than 135 people that work at home.
Me too.
I know,
Yeah.
me too.
So,
That's way out.
but either way, it's still in the hundreds, not in the thousands or thousands. And so we like to see that number in the middle grow. When Leland Consulting Group is here, they're going to get into a lot more weeds on that, but that's kind of a fun one to throw out. We also have a little bit about the personality of the community, and you're in these 3 categories that are rather enviable. So when we use this tapestry data from Esri, this is what marketing agencies use. You're in these fun ones called Green Acres, Bright Young Professionals, and Top Tier. I don't actually remember a community I've worked in that has Top Tier. That's a really high upper end threshold. And I'm going to just, again, skip through all this because I want to get to the fun stuff here at the end. So, Chris is going to come up and talk about why the heck we're going to use these other 3 cards. You want me to just run with it? Okay, since I'm talking, I'm standing here. So, I want you to take out the card with the red dots. We're going to do this quick because I did not want us to go over 2 hours and I was hoping an hour and a half, but we were having way too much fun. So, red dot. Take this card out and answer this question. Just give me a couple of bullet points. What are the biggest challenges for Parkville? And kind of consistent like the postcard exercise, I might just have a couple of people read them, but we want to collect these at the end because this will be really telling to us from what's on your mind. And sometimes when we do public meetings, we do similar things. Because not everybody speaks at a public meeting, but most everybody has a thought. Don't worry about spelling, bullet points, and just legible. Okay, 30 seconds, we'll wrap it up. Okay, anybody just dying to share a couple from their card?
Probably what everybody's going to say is balancing growth with the ambiance of Parkville as it exists today.
Well, most everybody I'm assuming have that.
Connectivity.
Okay, connectivity, back.
I had traffic flow, flood control, and noise pollution.
Noise pollution.
Aging infrastructure.
Anything in particular on the noise pollution? Just 'cause
Trains.
The train.
Trains. Okay, silly me. Mayor.
I think that we have a problem sometimes with our identity and where our city limits are and where they aren't, because sometimes we get calls about trash on the side of the roadway and some zoning, code violations and things like that. because of the county properties that look like they're within the city, there isn't anything we can do about it, but we have to live with it.
Absolutely.
And then I would also say that we have an inadequate state highway capacity and safety issue, which we're working on, but it's still a problem.
Sure. Appreciate that.
Well, I'll be consistent with my comments tonight, but I really think one of the biggest challenges we have is losing our small quality town feel due to our growth and development, and particularly the push on development in certain areas.
Yeah, and I really respect that. I've heard that from many communities I've worked with that are in your area, that are in your situation, not actually in your region.
That doesn't mean we're pro or against development by any means, but I'm talking about the constant push.
Yeah.
Particularly, people want to put up these 5-story bang-bangs and all this heavy stuff in small residential areas just because they get a piece of property. We've had a couple of those situations.
Okay, monster home.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Trying to keep ourselves somewhat.
Investor homes.
Sure.
Word escape.
Yeah, everybody know that term, monster homing? It's where you come in and you buy a couple of residential lots in an existing neighborhood, knock down the little bungalows and build a mansionero. Yeah. Oh, that's not what you're talking
I'm
about.
talking about taking those small residential or small areas, and all of a sudden you're trying to cram a couple of 5-story.
Oh, no, you're not talking monster homing. I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you meant. So you meaning like a mixed-use building or an apartment building or an office building? Gotcha.
5-story.
We haven't allowed it so far.
Yeah,
Gotcha,
there's a couple places
gotcha.
downtown.
Okay. All right.
A couple places.
On the,
I hate to say that.
did I go too far? There we go. I skipped opportunities. What do you guys see as the biggest opportunities for Parkville? So just like the green, red dot exercise, use the green dot. Because we're going to collect these at the end. It's a way for us to track. Biggest opportunities. So we kind of heard your concerns. If you're really creative, you could say, not losing the small town charm feel. That's our big opportunity. Okay. 15 seconds. Okay, anybody want to share a couple from their list of the big opportunities?
Riverfront tourism,
Riverfront tourism. I like that.
bring other people's money into the community and not raise your own taxes.
I would
Right.
agree with that, because I think having the river here is unique compared to many other
Yeah.
areas surrounding Kansas City.
And then there's so much access to it. There's so
Right.
much of it's
Direct
connected.
access, that's right.
We're not landlocked.
Not
We have
landlocked.
a lot of developable acreage left.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our parks and trails.
Parks and trails. Any other big opportunities?
There are smart and passionate pro-Parkville residents willing to roll up their sleeves and support the city.
That's good.
I second that. We have a great base of volunteers, and I'm always so proud of that.
Yeah. You know, if you got that, there's so many things you can accomplish.
Yes.
Let
This is a
alone
little
that
bit out of
lot.
left field, but proximity to the airport,
Mhm.
with the new airport coming, that's a huge benefit that we have that other parts of the city don't have.
Sure.
I don't know that we take full advantage of that per se, but.
Yeah. We know that from the City Hall building to the airport, you can get there quick if you need to. But just saying.
Get there quicker.
Yeah, so, right here.
It's not direct.
All right, well, let's jump on here to, on the lined side of your blank note card, the lined side. I just want one big dream. And if you're really creative, you'll make it into this rambling long sentence of all these dreams at a Ferris wheel. But it should be just one. I'm really pushing you. We're pushing you here to, what's that top priority? And it's part of our exercise to try to really pull out the top key things. So it might be a Ferris wheel for somebody there.
You can cheat.
Yeah, no copying from the neighbor. Okay, 10 seconds. Anybody want to share their one big dream? Mayor?
Extend the complete streets concept to all of our major corridors.
That's great. Anyone else?
Yeah, a riverfront that was built up like San Antonio. I mean, I know we couldn't do it like San Antonio because it's like a channel, but.
Big river at least.
Yeah, well, just a lot of activities down there. Again, Ferris wheel will be down there. There would be restaurants, there would be bike rentals, there would be scooter rentals. It would be a place where people would want to come and hang all day on Saturday and Sunday.
Zip line across the river.
Anyone else with their one big dream?
I always got to throw my Wi-Fi out there.
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi infrastructure for the park to attract more usage of our park. Maybe the only park that would have, like Wi-Fi throughout the park for those mobile users, and Internet of Things in the future could be interface. Just a thought.
We are working on that, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
There you go. See, your dream's going to be met
Technologists
soon.
involved.
You may have to come up with another dream.
I can architect a solution for you.
Any other big dream before we move on? Okay. Lastly, if you're playing ahead, you might think, back of the card, blank, give me the one big fear that we need to be watching out for, the one big fear. And it can't be no Ferris wheel or no, well, it could be no riverfront run, but that'd be acceptable. One big fear. My one big fear is to not meet the promise of keeping a meeting no longer than 2 hours. Stephen, I'm sorry. Okay, anybody want to share their one big fear?
Traffic's so congested, it takes longer to cross Parkville than to get to the airport.
Oh, there we go. Very specific, I like that.
I'll throw one out. Kind of ties in. We turn into 152 West of Liberty. Somebody already said that.
Yeah.
What did
I
you
think it
say?
would be a disaster for us.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'd say a balkanization.
Say that again.
Balkanization.
How do you mean?
It's kind of when you think about Yugoslavia and how it broke up, but you have regional factions that, you have communities that are pitting against each other for resources. We have Parkville's pretty spread out, and there's different demographics in different parts of the city, and my concern, and we've seen a little bit of this, but is that the city, there's a lot of infighting within the city for resources or kind of identity and some other things.
Like big cities get like Kansas, Missouri.
Right, yeah, you have the Northland versus, south of Jackson, South Jackson County.
The needs are starkly different for public safety in one area of the town as opposed to the other.
And then you have council members fighting against each other for their turn for money to flow into their area versus thinking of the bigger picture about what's better for the city.
Yeah, I really respect that. And sometimes even at a very low level, it's old townies versus new townies when you have a community that's growing as well. Which my community went through that. One more in the
My
back.
big fear is that we lose the quaintness and the charm that we have right now. And I look at the buildings downtown, none of them are registered historically. So if somebody wanted to come in and tear one down, they certainly could do that. So I think the fear of losing the Main Street to me is something I would really hate.
Okay. Anything up front here?
we lose our current culture as a small community that is fun and friendly.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
There's a number of us thinking alike here.
Yeah, right.
We lose control of the growth, the city loses its identity.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate all of this feedback, so don't ditch the cards. You can just leave them there, we'll collect, we want all three. If you need a pen, take the pen, you're welcome to it. And we definitely appreciate your time tonight. So the final thing on this, what we will be coming up with is confirming that project name we've got and logo, identity. We'll be updating this presentation based on what we discussed tonight and getting that pushed out so everybody can see it, including project schedule, so that we can all get that on our calendars. And we'll begin our data assembly, and we'll also be preparing our stakeholder contact list, so we know who we start contacting to do our couple of days of stakeholder interviews. And then the next time we'll be back is our analysis review workshop, which again, we really try for an hour and a half, and then we promise no more than 2 hours. So with that, unless anybody has any final thoughts or comments, we will stop. Okay. Great, thank you very much.